Jake Morrison stood in the corner of the military surplus store on Kepler Station. The place smelled like old metal and machine oil. Around him, his squad mates picked through rows of shiny plasma rifles and energy weapons. Each gun had blinking lights and digital displays that showed ammunition counts and power levels. Jake held something different. It was an old rifle made on Earth. The metal was dark and simple. No lights. No fancy displays. Just wood and steel put together the old way. The tag said it was a 308 Winchester bolt-action rifle with a basic scope. The price was cheap compared to the high-tech weapons his friends were buying. "Morrison, what is that piece of junk?" asked Corporal Stevens. He laughed and pointed at Jake's rifle. Stevens had picked out the newest plasma rifle in the store. It cost more than Jake made in 3 months. Jake ran his fingers along the rifle's wooden stock. "It's from Earth. My grandfather used something like this for hunting deer back home." "Hunting deer?" Private Chen walked over and looked at the rifle like it was a museum piece. "Jake, we're going to fight aliens, not animals. That thing looks like it belongs in a history book." The other Marines gathered around. They all carried the latest military gear. Their weapons could punch holes through tank armor and shoot beams of pure energy. Jake's rifle just fired simple metal bullets using old gunpowder. Sergeant Williams pushed through the group. He was a big man, with scars on his face from fighting on 3 different worlds. "Morrison, explain to me why you want to take that antique to Zirion 7. Jake looked up at his sergeant. "Sir, this rifle is reliable. It doesn't need power cells or fancy computers. It works in any weather and never jams. My drill instructor back on New Texas taught me to shoot with rifles like this." "But it's so slow," said Private Torres. She held up her energy rifle. "I can fire 20 shots while you reload that thing once. And it only shoots metal bullets," added Stevens. "Our plasma bolts burn through anything. Your bullets will just bounce off alien armor." Jake shrugged. "Maybe. But this rifle has something your weapons don't." "What's that?" asked Chen. Silence. Jake worked the bolt action. It made a smooth, quiet sound. No bright flashes. No electromagnetic signals. No heat signature. Sergeant Williams scratched his chin. He had fought the Zephyrians before on other worlds. "The bugs are smart, Morrison. They've been fighting for thousands of years. They know how to track our energy weapons. That's why I want something different, Sergeant." The squad finished their shopping and headed to the transport ship. On the way, Jake stopped at an ammunition store. He bought old-style bullets that used chemical powder instead of energy cells. The shop owner looked confused. "Son, are you sure about these?" The old man held up a box of 308 rounds. "These are museum pieces. Nobody uses kinetic ammunition anymore." "I do," Jake said simply. Back on the transport ship, the Marines prepared their gear. Stevens cleaned his plasma rifle with special tools and computer programs. Torres ran diagnostics on her energy weapons targeting system. Chen practiced with his rifle's holographic sight. Jake sat quietly and cleaned his rifle with a simple cloth and oil. No computers needed. No diagnostic programs. Just basic care that soldiers had used for hundreds of years. "Morrison is living in the past," Stevens whispered to Torres. "That rifle is going to get him killed." Lieutenant Parker walked through the ship, checking on his Marines. He stopped when he saw Jake's rifle. "Corporal Morrison, that's an unusual choice." "Yes, sir. It's what I know how to use." Lieutenant Parker picked up the rifle and looked through the scope. "I used something like this when I was a kid on Frontier Colony. My father taught me to hunt with it." He handed it back. "The Zephyrians are different from anything we've fought before, Morrison. They're natural hunters. They can stay perfectly still for days. Their bioweapons don't make any light or sound when they fire." "I understand, sir. Do you? We've lost more soldiers to their snipers than in direct fighting. They pick us off, one by one. We can't see them coming." Jake nodded. "That's why I think this old rifle might help, sir. If they're hunting us with advanced weapons, maybe we need to hunt them with something they don't expect." The lieutenant looked at Jake for a long moment. You grew up on a frontier colony, didn't you? Yes, sir. New Texas. My family raised cattle and hunted for food. Real hunting. Not virtual reality training. Real hunting, sir. I learned to track animals through the woods, how to read signs in the dirt and broken branches, how to move without making noise. Lieutenant Parker smiled slightly. The Zephyrians think like predators, Morrison. Maybe we need someone who thinks like a hunter. The ship's intercom crackled. Attention all Marines. We will reach Zerion 7 inches, 6 hours. Prepare for combat deployment. Jake checked his rifle one more time. The weapon was simple but perfectly made. Every part fit together exactly right. The scope was clear and true. The trigger was smooth and light. Stevens walked by and shook his head. Morrison, when we get planetside, stay behind the real soldiers. That toy gun won't help anyone. We'll see, Jake said quietly. He looked out the ship's window at the green moon of Zerion 7 growing larger. The planet was covered in thick forests and crystalline mountains. Intelligence reports said the Zephyrians had turned the whole moon into a hunting ground. Human forces were already there, but they were taking heavy casualties. The Zephyrians were like giant insects with natural armor and perfect camouflage. Their snipers could blend into any background and wait motionless for hours or days. When they fired their bio-weapons, there was no flash or sound to give away their position. Human forces had tried everything. Orbital strikes couldn't target hidden enemies. Energy weapons were too easy to track. Drones and sensors were jammed or destroyed. Jake patted his rifle. Maybe what they needed was something old. Something simple. Something the aliens wouldn't expect. The transport ship shuddered as it entered Zerion 7's atmosphere. Through the window, Jake could see the dark forests below. Somewhere down there, invisible enemies were waiting. His squad mates checked their fancy weapons one more time. Jake just held his simple rifle and thought about hunting trips with his grandfather back on Earth. The old man had always said the best weapon was the one you knew how to use. Soon, Jake would find out if grandfather was right. The landing on Zerion 7 went badly from the start. Jake's transport ship touched down in a clearing surrounded by tall, crystalline trees. The trees looked like glass but were harder than steel. Their surfaces reflected light in strange patterns that made it hard to see clearly. As soon as the ship doors opened, the Marines heard the sound they had been dreading. A sharp crack echoed through the forest. Private Martinez from another unit fell to the ground. A small hole appeared in his chest armor, smoking slightly. "Sniper!" shouted Lieutenant Parker. "Everyone take cover." The Marines scattered behind rocks and fallen trees. Jake pressed himself against a crystal boulder and looked around. He couldn't see any enemies. The forest was quiet, except for the sound of wind through the strange trees. "Where did that shot come from?" asked Stevens. He held his plasma rifle ready, but had no target. "Could be anywhere," said Sergeant Williams. "The Zephyrians can blend into any background." Another crack. This time Corporal Hayes from Bravo Squad dropped. The enemy sniper had hit him in the head through his helmet. The shot had come from a completely different direction. "Two snipers," said Lieutenant Parker into his radio. "Maybe more. We're pinned down at Landing Zone Alpha." Jake studied the forest. His grandfather had taught him to look for things that didn't belong. Animals and birds always left signs when they moved through an area. Even alien snipers had to disturb something. But the crystal trees made everything confusing. Light bounced in all directions. Shadows fell at strange angles. It was like being inside a broken mirror. "Movement. 2 o'clock. Torres raised her energy rifle and fired. The bright plasma bolt lit up the forest like lightning. It hit a crystal tree and melted a hole through it. Immediately, 3 more cracks sounded from different directions. The plasma bolt had given away Torres's position to every sniper in the area. She dove for cover as bullets sparked off the rocks around her. "Stop using energy weapons," ordered Lieutenant Parker. "The muzzle flashes are giving us away." But that left the Marines with a problem. Their standard kinetic rifles were loud and produced smoke. The Zephyrian snipers could track those too. Only Jake's old rifle was truly quiet. The squad stayed pinned down for 2 hours. Every time someone moved, another sniper shot rang out. The aliens never missed. If they fired at a Marine, That Marine died. Finally, a rescue team arrived with armored vehicles. The Marines loaded their wounded and dead, then retreated to Forward Operating Base Charlie. The base was built inside a natural crater, with high crystal walls on all sides. Guard towers and sensor arrays watched the forest beyond. Inside the base, Jake saw the cost of fighting the Zephyrians. The medical tent was full of wounded soldiers. The morgue had bodies waiting to be sent home. In just 1 week of fighting, human forces had lost over 100 Marines. Colonel Rodriguez called a briefing for all squad leaders. Jake attended because Lieutenant Parker was in the medical tent with a bullet graze on his arm. "The Zephyrians are different from any enemy we've faced," said the colonel. "They're natural predators who have turned war into an art form. Their snipers can remain motionless for days at a time. They have natural camouflage that makes them nearly invisible." The colonel showed pictures on a large screen. The images showed what looked like empty forest. Then the computer highlighted shapes that might be Zephyrian soldiers. Even when pointed out, they were almost impossible to see. "Their bioweapons are worse than our best rifles," continued Colonel Rodriguez. "They fire concentrated photon bursts that leave no heat trail and make no sound. The first sign you've been targeted is when the bullet hits you." A major from intelligence stood up. "Sir, what about their weaknesses?" "Every enemy has them. That's the problem, Major. We haven't found any significant weaknesses. Our energy weapons are too bright. Our kinetic rifles are too loud. Our sensors can't detect them until it's too late." Sergeant Williams raised his hand. "What about close combat, sir? If we can get near them? Their natural armor is thick as tank plating. Plus, they have backup from their warrior caste. Getting close enough for hand-to-hand fighting usually means walking through a kill zone full of snipers." Jake listened to all this and thought about his grandfather's hunting stories. The old man had hunted dangerous predators on Earth's frontier colonies. He always said the key was thinking like your prey. That night, Jake sat outside his tent and cleaned his rifle. The base was quiet, except for the hum of generators and the distant sound of guard patrols. Stevens walked over and sat down. "Morrison, I owe you an apology." "Oh, for what?" "Making fun of your rifle. Today in the forest, my plasma weapon almost got Torres killed. That bright flash was like a signal flare to every sniper out there." Jake worked oil into the rifle's bolt mechanism. "Energy weapons have their place, Stevens, just not against enemies who hunt by tracking energy signatures." "How do you know so much about hunting?" "My grandfather. He taught me that the best hunters don't just have good weapons. They understand their prey." Jake looked toward the forest beyond the base walls. "The Zephyrians are predators, but they're also prey animals when someone is hunting them." Chen joined them by the small fire. "The colonel says they can stay still for days." "How do you hunt something like that?" "Patience," said Jake, "and understanding their patterns. Every animal has habits, even alien ones. They have to eat, sleep, and move sometimes. When they do, they leave signs." Torres came over, her arm in a sling from diving behind rocks earlier. "But how do you find signs in that crystal forest?" "Everything reflects light. Everything looks the same." Jake smiled slightly. "That's the thing about camouflage. It works great against people who rely on their eyes and technology. But there are other ways to track." "Like what?" asked Stevens. "Sound, smell, vibrations in the ground, changes in air movement." Jake held up his rifle. "This old weapon doesn't give off any electronic signals, no heat signature, no light flash. It's invisible to their sensors." Sergeant Williams approached the group. "Morrison, the lieutenant is still in medical. Colonel Rodriguez wants volunteers for a reconnaissance mission tomorrow. It's dangerous work." The other Marines looked uncomfortable. Reconnaissance meant going into the forest alone or in small groups. It meant being exposed to sniper fire with no backup. Jake stood up and shouldered his rifle. "I'll go, Sergeant." "Morrison, that's suicide," said Chen. "You'll be out there alone with just that old rifle." "Maybe," Jake said, "but sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones." He looked at his rifle again. Tomorrow he would find out if his grandfather's hunting lessons could work against alien predators who had been perfecting their skills for thousands of years. The crystal forest waited beyond the base walls. Somewhere in those reflected shadows, invisible enemies were watching and waiting. Jake would go hunting among the hunters. Jake left the base before dawn. He moved slowly through the crystal forest, stopping every few steps to listen. The trees made soft singing sounds when wind passed through them. Small insects buzzed in the undergrowth. These were normal forest sounds. He was looking for sounds that didn't belong. His grandfather had taught him this technique on New Texas. Every forest has a rhythm, the old man had said. When predators are near, the rhythm changes. Birds stop singing. Small animals go quiet. You have to learn to hear what's not there. Jake carried his rifle across his chest, ready but not threatening. His movements were smooth and natural. He had practiced this kind of stalking since he was a child, following deer through earth-like forests. The crystal trees made tracking difficult. Their surfaces reflected light in confusing patterns. Looking directly at them hurt his eyes. But Jake had learned not to look for shapes. Instead, he watched for movement and patterns. After 2 hours, he found his first clue. A section of crystal moss had been disturbed. The tiny plants grew in perfect spirals on the tree trunks. But here, the spiral was broken. Something had brushed against it recently. Jake knelt and studied the damage. The broken moss was still damp. The disturbance was fresh, maybe an hour old. Something large had moved through this area. He followed the trail of tiny disturbances. A scratch on crystal bark here. A bent grass blade there. The signs were almost invisible, but they formed a path through the forest. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Animals always take the easiest path. Even when they're hunting, they follow routes that save energy. Find the path. Find the animal. The trail led upward toward a ridge covered with tall crystal spires. Jake moved even more carefully now. High ground was perfect for snipers. The broken trail suggested something had moved up there recently. At the base of the ridge, Jake found something that made him freeze. Mixed with the normal crystal formations was something different. It looked like crystal, but it was slightly out of place. The pattern was wrong. A Zephyrian sniper in camouflage. Jake slowly backed behind a large tree and studied the position. The alien was positioned perfectly to watch the main trail that human patrols used. From up there, it could see for kilometers in all directions. The creature had been in position for so long that small crystal growths had actually started forming on its armor. It was like looking at a statue that had been left in the elements for years. But Jake noticed something his high-tech squad mates would have missed. Very slowly, almost invisible, the creature was breathing. Each breath caused a tiny disturbance in the air around it. Small spores from nearby plants moved in a gentle pattern around the sniper's position. Jake smiled. His grandfather had taught him to watch for exactly this kind of sign when hunting difficult prey. He studied the area carefully. The sniper was about 800 meters away. Uphill. Wind was coming from the left at about 10 kilometers per hour. Jake made mental calculations his grandfather had taught him. Bullet drop, wind drift, distance compensation. Modern weapons did these calculations automatically with computers. Jake did them in his head using knowledge passed down from human hunters for centuries. He found a stable shooting position behind a fallen crystal log. The surface was smooth enough to rest his rifle on. He had a clear line of sight to the target. Jake worked the bolt slowly and quietly. The movement was so smooth it made almost no sound. He settled the rifle's stock against his shoulder and looked through the simple scope. The crosshairs found the target. The alien sniper was still motionless, watching the trail below. It had no idea it was being hunted. Jake controlled his breathing the way his grandfather had taught him. In, out, in, hold. Between heartbeats, when his body was perfectly still, he squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed off the crystal surfaces. The bullet traveled at over 800 meters per second. The Zephyrian sniper jerked once and went completely still. Jake waited. In hunting dangerous animals, you never assumed the first shot was enough. Sometimes wounded predators could still fight, but after 5 minutes, the alien hadn't moved. Small crystal formations around its position had stopped vibrating. The creature was dead. Jake worked the bolt again and loaded another round. He scanned the area for other snipers. Zephyrians often worked in pairs or small groups. He found the second sniper 10 minutes later. This one was positioned on the opposite side of the ridge, covering a different approach to the human base. It had probably been waiting for backup after hearing the gunshot. This shot was more difficult. The range was over 1 kilometer, and the target was partially hidden behind crystal formations. Jake had to calculate a precise angle to get the bullet through a small gap in the coverage. He took his time. Rushed shots usually meant missed shots, and missed shots meant the enemy knew where you were. The second shot was as clean as the first. The alien sniper toppled from its hidden position and fell among the crystal spires. Jake stayed in position for another hour, watching for more enemies. When he was satisfied the area was clear, he moved closer to examine his targets. The first sniper was exactly where he had expected to find it. The creature was massive, nearly 3 meters long, with natural armor that looked like living crystal. Its bioweapon was unlike anything Jake had seen. The rifle seemed to be grown rather than manufactured, with organic curves and no visible mechanical parts. Jake studied the weapon carefully. It had no trigger that he could see. The alien probably fired it using nerve impulses or muscle contractions. He took pictures of both snipers and their weapons with a military camera. Intelligence would want to see everything. On the way back to base, Jake left small markers at key positions. Not obvious ones that the aliens might find, but subtle scratches on crystal surfaces that human patrols would recognize. These markers would help other Marines navigate safely through areas he had cleared. The return trip took 3 hours. Jake moved carefully, watching for more snipers and checking his back trail. He reached the base perimeter, just as the afternoon patrol was forming up. Sergeant Williams was waiting at the gate. "Morrison, we heard gunshots from your direction. Are you all right?" "Fine, Sergeant. But there are 2 dead snipers on Ridge 7. The sergeant stared at him. "2? You took out 2 Zephyrian snipers by yourself?" "Yes, Sergeant. With that old rifle?" Jake patted the weapon slung across his shoulder. Simple tools for simple problems. Word spread through the base quickly. Jake Morrison, the Marine with the antique rifle, had done something no one else had managed. He had hunted alien snipers in their own territory and won. Colonel Rodriguez wanted a full debriefing immediately. As Jake walked toward the command post, other Marines stared at him with new respect. His toy gun didn't look like a toy anymore. Colonel Rodriguez spread the photographs across his desk. They showed the 2 dead Zephyrian snipers from every angle. "Morrison, these shots are impossible." The first target was 800 meters uphill. The second was over 1 kilometer through a gap smaller than a dinner plate. Jake stood at attention in the command post. "Sir, the shots were difficult, but not impossible. I had good positions and took my time, with iron sights and manual calculations." "Yes, sir. My grandfather taught me to shoot this way." The colonel picked up Jake's rifle and examined it. "This weapon has no computer assistance. No laser rangefinder. No ballistic computer. How do you make shots like this?" "Practice, sir, and understanding the environment." Major Phillips from intelligence leaned forward. "Morrison, we've been fighting the Zephyrians for 6 months. Their snipers have killed over 300 of our people. No one has been able to counter them effectively. How did you do it?" Jake thought for a moment. "Sir, I think we've been fighting them the wrong way. We use technology to find technology. But the Zephyrians aren't using technology the way we understand it. They use biological weapons and natural camouflage. So maybe we need to use natural methods to hunt them." Colonel Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Morrison, I'm reassigning you to Special Operations. Your job is to eliminate Zephyrian snipers. You'll have complete freedom to operate however you think best." "Yes, sir." That afternoon, Jake went hunting again. This time, he took a different route through the forest. He had studied patrol reports and casualty lists. The enemy snipers followed patterns, just like any other predator. They positioned themselves along human supply routes. They avoided areas with heavy vehicle traffic. They preferred high ground with multiple escape routes. Most importantly, they never used the same position twice in a row. Jake found his third target guarding the approach to Water Point Beta. Human units had been taking casualties there for weeks. Every time someone went for water, a sniper shot came from the surrounding hills. This sniper was clever. It had positioned itself in a tree that looked exactly like the crystal formations around it. The camouflage was perfect. Jake only found it by watching the flight patterns of small flying insects. The creatures avoided one particular tree because something large was hiding in it. The shot was tricky. The target was 40 meters up and partially hidden by crystal branches. Jake had to wait for the alien to shift position slightly before he could get a clear shot. When he fired, the sniper fell from the tree and crashed through crystal formations on the way down. The sound echoed through the forest like breaking glass. Jake marked the location and moved on. Intelligence reports suggested at least 3 more snipers operated in this area. He found the 4th one 2 hours later. This alien had dug itself into the ground and covered itself with loose crystals and plant matter. Only the barrel of its bioweapon was visible, and that looked like just another crystal formation. Jake spotted it by accident when he stepped on soft ground that hadn't been there the day before. Something had recently dug a hole and covered it up. When he looked carefully, he could see the outline of the hidden position. This shot required patience. The target was completely buried, except for a small opening where its weapon protruded. Jake had to wait until the alien shifted to get a shot at its head. He waited for over an hour. Finally, the creature moved slightly to track a human patrol in the distance. For just a moment, part of its head was visible through the opening. Jake fired. The shot went exactly where he aimed it. By the end of the second day, Jake had eliminated 6 Zephyrian snipers. Word spread through human forces that the sniper threat was decreasing. Patrols that had been pinned down for days were able to move freely. On the 3rd day, Jake noticed something different. The remaining snipers were acting strangely. Instead of staying in fixed positions for days, they were moving frequently. They seemed nervous and uncertain. Jake found his 7th target on a ridge overlooking supply route Charlie. But when he approached the position, the sniper was gone. It had abandoned a perfect shooting position for no apparent reason. He tracked the creature through the forest. The alien was moving quickly and carelessly, leaving a trail that would have embarrassed a human recruit. Something had spooked it badly. Jake caught up with it 3 kilometers from its original position. The alien was hiding in a cave, cramped into a space barely large enough for its body. This was not normal behavior for a predator species. The shot was easy. The sniper was trapped in the cave with nowhere to run. That evening, Jake overheard radio communications between human units. The reports were all similar. Zephyrian snipers were abandoning positions and retreating deeper into the forest. Some were making basic mistakes they had never made before. "They're scared," Jake told Sergeant Williams that night. "Scared? Zephyrians don't get scared. They're apex predators. Every animal gets scared when something starts hunting it," Jake said. "The snipers know that something is killing them, but they don't know what. Their technology can't detect me or my weapon. So, from their perspective, their hunters are being killed by ghosts. They find their dead people with holes in them, but they never see or hear the weapon that made the holes." Jake cleaned his rifle while he talked. "I've been leaving my spent bullet casings at each kill site. Brass casings from chemical ammunition. The aliens probably don't even know what they are." Sergeant Williams laughed. "You're psychologically torturing them. I'm making them understand they're not the apex predators anymore." On the 4th day, Jake eliminated 4 more snipers. These were easy kills because the aliens were making desperate mistakes. They were moving during daylight. They were choosing poor positions. They were abandoning cover when they thought they heard danger. The last sniper Jake found that day was actually trying to retreat from the combat zone entirely. It was moving fast through the forest, carrying all its equipment and heading away from human positions. Jake tracked it for hours. The alien was panicked and exhausted. When he finally caught up, It was resting by a crystal stream. Looking over its shoulder constantly, the shot put it out of its misery. That evening, Colonel Rodriguez called Jake to the command post again. "Morrison, in 4 days you've eliminated 11 Zephyrian snipers. That's more than all our other units combined in 6 months. How do you feel about that?" Jake thought about his grandfather's hunting stories. The old man had always taught him to respect the animals he hunted, even dangerous ones. "Sir, I feel like we finally understand our enemy. The Zephyrians are natural predators. But they've never been hunted before. They don't know how to handle being prey. Thanks for watching. And now? Now they know that humans can hunt too." The colonel smiled. "Morrison, intelligence reports suggest the remaining snipers are retreating to the northern mountains. Our ground forces can finally advance without fear of sniper attacks." Jake nodded. For the first time since landing on Zirion 7, human forces would be able to move freely across the battlefield. The tide of war was turning. One simple bullet at a time, Jake returned to Forward Operating Base Charlie as the sun set on his 4th day in the field. The base looked different than when he had left. Marines were moving freely between buildings instead of running from cover to cover. Guard towers that had been abandoned due to sniper fire were manned again. At the gate, Private Chen stared at Jake's rifle with something close to awe. "Morrison, is it true? Did you really kill 11 of them?" "11 confirmed," Jake said simply. Word had spread through the entire base. As Jake walked toward the command post, Marines stopped what they were doing to watch him pass. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered to their friends. A few reached out to touch his rifle. Like it was some kind of magic weapon. Jake felt uncomfortable with the attention. His grandfather had taught him that good hunters didn't boast about their kills. They did their job quietly and moved on. Sergeant Williams met him at the command post entrance. "Morrison, you've got visitors. Some very important people want to talk to you." Inside, Jake found not just Colonel Rodriguez but 3 other officers he didn't recognize. Their uniforms showed they were from high command. One was a general. "Corporal Morrison," said General Harrison. "I flew in from Earth specifically to meet you. Your success against the Zephyrian snipers has changed this entire campaign." Jake stood at attention. "Thank you, sir." "Tell me about your weapon," said the second officer, a colonel with intelligence insignia. "Our reports say you're using a primitive kinetic rifle with no electronic components." Jake unsung his rifle and placed it on the table. The officers gathered around it like scientists studying an alien artifact. "It's a 308 Winchester bolt-action rifle, sir. Manufactured by Morrison Arms Company on Earth. They make hunting rifles for frontier colonies." General Harrison picked up the weapon and looked through the scope. "No computer assistance at all?" "No, sir. Just mechanical systems. The scope adjusts manually for range and wind." "And you calculate bullet trajectory in your head?" "Yes, sir. My grandfather taught me the math." The intelligence colonel shook his head. "Morrison, our best snipers use rifles with quantum processors and AI targeting systems. They can hit targets at 5 kilometers with computer assistance. But against the Zephyrians, their high-tech weapons were useless." "Why do you think your primitive rifle worked?" asked General Harrison. Jake thought carefully about his answer. "Sir, I think the aliens were prepared to fight our advanced technology. Their bioweapons can detect electromagnetic signatures, thermal emissions, and quantum fluctuations, but they never expected to face chemical propellant and simple mechanics." "Explain." "My rifle produces no electromagnetic signature, sir. The chemical powder creates a brief flash that's easily hidden. The bullet is just a piece of metal moving fast. There's nothing for their sensors to detect." The third officer, a major from research and development, was taking notes on a tablet. "Morrison, we've analyzed the brass casings you left at each kill site. The Zephyrians seem to have no idea what they are." "That makes sense, sir. They've probably never seen chemical ammunition before." General Harrison set down the rifle and looked at Jake directly. "Son, because of your work, our ground forces were able to advance 8 kilometers in the last 2 days. We've taken objectives that had been held by the enemy for months. The entire strategic situation on Zirion 7 has changed. I'm glad I could help, sir. Help? The general laughed. Morrison, you've shown us that sometimes the solution to an advanced problem isn't simple answer. We've been trying to out-technology the Zephyrians instead of outthinking them. The research and development major looked up from his tablet. Sir, I've been in contact with Morrison Arms Company on Earth. They're a small family business that makes fewer than 1,000 rifles per year, mostly for hunters and collectors. Not anymore, said General Harrison. As of tomorrow, they have a military contract worth 2 billion credits. We want 10,000 rifles exactly like Morrison's, plus ammunition and training materials. Jake stared. Sir, you're going to equip Marines with hunting rifles? We're going to equip Marines with weapons that work, Morrison. We've learned that advanced doesn't always mean better. That evening, Jake sat outside his tent cleaning his rifle. The base was celebrating around him. For the first time in months, human forces were winning battles instead of just surviving them. Stevens approached and sat down beside him. Morrison, I owe you more than an apology. I was wrong about everything. How so? I thought newer was always better. Faster firing rates, bigger explosions, more technology. But you showed us that sometimes the old ways work best. Torres joined them, her arm healed from diving behind rocks a few days earlier. Jake, there's something I don't understand. How did you know the aliens would be vulnerable to kinetic weapons? I didn't know for sure, Jake admitted. But my grandfather always said that if you want to hunt successfully, you have to think differently than your prey expects. Chen sat down with the group. What do you mean? The Zephyrians have been fighting advanced civilizations for thousands of years. They've learned to counter energy weapons, electromagnetic sensors, and high-tech tactics, but they've probably never fought humans using primitive technology. Jake worked oil into his rifle's bolt. This rifle is 300 years old in design. The Zephyrians had no defense against it because they never imagined anyone would use such simple weapons. Sergeant Williams approached the group. Morrison, I just got word from command. You're being promoted to sergeant and transferred to a new unit. They're forming a special sniper company equipped with primitive kinetic rifles. Who's going to be in it? Marines from frontier colonies, people who grew up hunting and tracking. Command wants soldiers who can think like you do. Jake smiled. Grandfather would be proud. 2 weeks later, Jake received a message from Earth. Morrison Arms Company had hired 50 new workers to meet military demand. His grandfather's small rifle business was now a major defense contractor. But the best news came from intelligence reports. Zephyrian forces across 3 star systems were retreating from human territory. Word had spread through their military about the invisible human hunters who killed with weapons that couldn't be detected. The aliens had intercepted human communications about primitive kinetic rifles and chemical propellant weapons. To a species that had abandoned such technology millennia ago, the idea of deliberately using inferior weapons seemed impossible to understand. But they understood the results. Their elite snipers, the backbone of their military strategy, were being systematically eliminated by weapons that shouldn't exist. Jake read the intelligence summary and laughed. His grandfather's old hunting rifle had done more than kill 11 snipers. It had convinced an entire alien civilization that humans were unpredictable and dangerous. Sometimes the best weapon was the one your enemy never saw coming. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and sometimes a simple piece of metal fired by controlled explosions was exactly what you needed to change the course of an interstellar war. Jake cleaned his rifle one more time and prepared for his next mission. There were more aliens to hunt, and he had learned that humans were very good at hunting indeed.